Welcome back, guys, to the channel. I'm Jake ELLENBOGEN, and today we have something fun planned for you guys. It is going to be the Ernest Jones breakdown that you guys have been asking for. I'm going to go back to, pretty much how I had him. I had him 19th overall linebacker in this draft. As you guys know, I've been a little higher on him lately after going back and watching the film, but I did more of a deep dive. I watched about 5 games. Put together, a little reel here while I'm talking. You guys are going to be able to see the film, good and bad things. Just to start off, though, before we get into it, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. If you're a Rams fan, you definitely should subscribe because I'm doing a lot of content for the Rams. On top of that, please hit the like button. It really does help out. And drop a comment. Let's discuss. But we'll get right into it. Ernest Jones, the 3rd round pick this season for the Rams out of South Carolina. He is likely going to be a starting linebacker on this roster next to Travin Howard. And I'm very excited for that dynamic. But I will say this, and I will revisit this at the end of the video. I had a 3rd overall linebacker grade on Baron Browning, even a 1st round grade on him. And he was there. The Rams chose Ernest Jones. So I'm going to go through. I don't want to make it all about Baron Browning, but I'm going to go through with all of Ernest Jones' film. And at the end, I will decide and let you guys know whether I think this was the right pick over Baron Browning or not. And I'm going to be honest with you because, at the end of the day, that's what I want to do. So let's just get started here. As you guys know, I've explained why I had Ernest ranked really low. I had him as a 6th round grade, and I think I was a little too low on him. Went back, watched the film, and he was definitely better than I initially gave him credit for. The common misconception is that he's just a thumper. And to me, I honestly, I think obviously, this is somebody that has a lot of pop behind his pads. But the thing with Ernest Jones is this. He offers more than just hitting. He offers more than just tackling. But on top of that, one thing that really stood out to me, this guy is not a gap shooter. This is not a guy that's going to have a ton of tackles for a loss. He's just not that type of guy. He struggles to disengage blocks, go through the middle and shoot the B gap or the A gap. And to me, like that, you could argue that's a problem, but not all linebackers are all that great at gap shooting. Another thing here, he has a long way to go, but he showed promise in coverage. There's this idea that he's supposedly this guy that has to come off the field on 3rd down. I guess it depends on who you have, and I guess you could argue the Rams could definitely do that with guys like Taylor Rapp and Terrell Burgess, who could, slide into a pseudo linebacker spot. Guys like Travin Howard and Kenny Young and the strides that Troy Reader's made in coverage, but you don't have to. And I do think that's another misconception with Ernest Jones, is that he is just a total liability in coverage. That's not really true. He's gonna, like I said, he has a long way to go before he's a good coverage linebacker, but he made some big time plays. He flashed, and he's definitely, with NFL coaching, going to get better in that area. The ball skills, I think, could be better, but I think they're going to be better in the NFL. This is somebody that had 2 interceptions, both of which came in 2019, one of which you'll see in this video here as we're going through it. But, this to me is somebody that has shown you that he didn't really get a ton of opportunities to have, those interceptions. And a lot of the time you'll see on film is that they throw away from him. They didn't really pick on him. And so, for that reason, not as many opportunities, not as many interceptions. But that interception against Kentucky was a huge interception, and it showed the ability basically, to not only, move well, on the run, but follow the quarterback's eyes and stick with your man. And he did a really nice job of that, jumping the route and, picking that off. So that was definitely an impressive feat there. And then on top of that, I think he fits the Rams. They want a longer limbed type of guy. He looks bigger than he truly is, but he also plays big. They don't go after, you know, ultra athletic linebackers. They never have. I mean, look at Corey Littleton. The guy ran a 4.7. Obviously, I think he played a lot faster than that on film. You know, Troy Reader. I mean, we could go through the list. They don't go after those ultra athletic linebackers like a Baron Browning. And, you know, I have mixed feelings about that. But I will say that Ernest Jones isn't a liability as an athlete. Like, initially, what you'll see when you see the RAS score, when you see his time, when you see, you know, what he did at his pro day, he's admitted to it. He knows he didn't do well at his pro day. But at the same time, when you go back, you watch the film, it's honestly, I would say this, it's more concerning when a player plays really well at a really high level, you know, at the pro day, like they test really well, and then on film they don't show that same speed, because that tells me that they're second guessing. I don't see that with Ernest Jones. I don't feel like he's second guessing. He's the opposite. He tested poorly, and some guys do, but he's faster on film, which is something that you love to see. He, again, not a gap shooter, sure, but this is somebody that, you know, when he locks onto a target and he runs in a straight line, he's got that straight line speed that's a lot faster than what he timed at his 40, where he can make an impact. And, you know, he can go sideline to sideline, as evidenced by the interception and, you know, a few of those sideline to sideline tackles you'll see throughout this video. But the thing about Ernest Jones is that he's not a true sideline to sideline linebacker, so you can't just automatically put him in that pre-existing pod where he is a guy that can come in and be a true sideline to sideline linebacker. That's not his game. He does a lot more than just that, and at the end of the day, he's not a Devin Bush. He didn't run a 4.3, and so for me, you know, to put him in that realm, I think is kind of unfair to him, because that's just not his style of game. He can do that every now and then, but he's not a true sideline to sideline linebacker. He's not a Deion Jones, and if you're trying to, you know, expect him to be that, you're going to be solely disappointed. But you definitely see his leadership on film. This is somebody that is, you know, very excited for his teammates. He's a dog, but on top of that, when, you know, his teammates are making a big play, whether it was, you know, somebody like Wanham or any of those guys, you know, he definitely got up in their face and let them know, you know, he approved. But he's also got some of that, like, villain mentality, which I do like, because I don't want my linebacker to be, you know, a goody two-shoes necessarily on the field. I mean, don't get, you know, unnecessary roughness penalties like crazy, and don't, you know, push the ref or anything like that. But what you'll see is Ernest Jones will let you know how he feels about you when he, you know, makes a big play, and he'll jaw at you. And I do like to see that dog mentality in a linebacker. That's something that I do feel like the Rams somewhat lack, I would say. So he definitely has that. On top of that, you see on film, he's definitely comfortable calling the defense. He was the guy in the middle. And, I mean, you had Brunson there in 2019, but he really was the sole guy in 2020 and pretty much 2019 as well. Really do like his versatility and how, you know, South Carolina deploys him all over the field. I mean, you see in this video, I circled all of these plays. He is all over the place. I mean, while he plays on, you know, the middle of the field a lot, because that's his position, obviously, you know, middle linebacker, inside linebacker. He's been used, you know, as a pass rusher on the outside. He's been used, you know, in the slot. I mean, you know, guy basically playing nickel at times. I mean, they deployed him in a way different way than what you would have expected for a guy that, you know, is somewhat of a laboring athlete. Again, he's not an athletic liability, but I do think this idea that he's going to come in and be this ultra athletic guy, that's just not his style. That will never be his style, because that's just not him. You definitely see, you know, how comfortable he is, obviously. This isn't a hot and cold motor guy. I know we get that a lot, where it's like his motor runs cold, his motor runs hot, he's on and off. To me, the way I'd say it is that he has the dial turned midway. He's not a high octane player. His motor isn't super hot, but he has a good motor for the most part turned midway, and then he just takes it up to like animal level. And I think that's the best way to describe it, because cold is just assuming that he's below the notch, he's below the middle of the field. And to me, I don't feel like that's fair. I think he's constantly playing at least, you know, at the mid-dial position, but then when he turns it all the way up past 10, you know, that's when you can see when he makes a big-time play, or, you know, a nice chase down tackle, you know, maybe a strip fumble, you know, things like that. That's something I noticed. So I wouldn't say his motor runs hot and cold. I just would say his motor runs, you know, fairly normal, pretty average, and then turns up the dial in big time situations. Obviously, theoretically, you'd love to see a guy that can play with a super high motor at all times. I just don't think that's very realistic. And this isn't, again, this isn't somebody that ran a 4.3. This isn't an ultra athletic specimen. This isn't a guy that can just play 100 miles an hour every single snap. And to be honest with you, when we get, you know, when we knock guys for that, we need to keep in mind these guys, these linebackers don't come out of the game very often. They play pretty much the whole game. So it's about pacing too. When you see a guy kind of jogging and not really taking that hit, or maybe, you know, he seems quote unquote lazy, you have to keep in mind he is labored. I mean, these guys play, you know, 50 to 80 snaps a game at the inside linebacker position, especially in college. So it's definitely something that we need to get better at, because, you know, very often do we'll constantly blame, you know, players, or we'll hit them with the, you know, the knock on them is that they're lazy. But in reality, that's a tough position to play, and you really have to have pacing, because if you overdo it, and you're done. You have to play 4 quarters. That's not easy. And so that's why you will see that from time to time. He's got some serious pop behind his pads. Some of these hits are just jarring. I know at first you see some of them, and yes, he will need help. This isn't a guy that will consistently get solo tackles, but he's not going to need to. This Rams team is fast. They were fast last year. The scheme also helps them out. You're going to have the defensive backs and Jalen Ramsey, Darius Williams. You're going to have Terrell Burgess, Jordan Fuller, Taylor Rapp, Nick Scott. You're going to have pass rushers like Leonard Floyd that can get over there and help. That's the thing, is the Rams ultimately, their scheme is really going to help a guy like Ernest Jones out, and why I think they're going to be very confident he can start day one. Again, the stop and start, the labored movement, he's not super agile, and that's okay. He doesn't have to be super agile. That's not his game. He's not, again, he's not a super athlete, but he's good enough and, you know, shows promise where I don't have to worry about him. He's not a horrible athlete. It's not like he ran a 5.40. It's not like his 3-cone drill was menacing. I mean, he's a solid athlete, and he's an NFL athlete, and he belongs. So I will put that in there. He's faster on film again than his pro day. I would just say that again. I just want to make that very clear. A little stiff in the hips. He can backpedal and flip his hips better than, you know, he's given credit for, but he is a little stiff. I think this guy has potential in coverage. I think he'll get better with NFL coaching, but I do think because how tight-hipped he is, or, you know, he's not loose, we'll say that. You know, there are times where he can look that way, but overall he is a little stiff. I don't see him getting past that, which is going to, it's not going to necessarily hamper his career, but I do feel like, you know, other guys that have very loose hips, they're going to be able to be, you know, studs in coverage. This guy, I think, caps out at being a pretty good coverage linebacker. In conclusion, though, as we, you know, wrap this thing up, I would just say I absolutely would have taken Baron Browning. I'm just going to be real with you. He is a freakish athlete. This is somebody that can, you know, crash the middle. He's going to be a gap shooter. He's a true sideline-to-sideline linebacker. He's got amazing potential in coverage because he does have loose hips. He can flip them on a dime. He plays like a defensive back, in my opinion, just super athletic. He tested out of this world. And for me, like I said, I had a first-round grade on him. I cannot believe he fell to the Rams and they chose Ernest Jones over him. But at the same time, I do understand it. They had their eyes solely set on him. I think this was their guy. They wanted to lead their defense. And to be honest with you, having that intel, you know, with Thomas Brown, who was at South Carolina as the running backs coach, getting to, you know that and everything, I'm not surprised they took him. And I think that, you know, this is somebody Thomas Brown felt comfortable, you know, relaying to Sean McVay, like, look, I've seen this guy, I know what he is, and, you know, I've been in that building, I know his energy. He got a great leadership grade, one of the highest I think the Rams have given out, so it does make sense there. However, I do think they missed out on Baron Browning, who is going to the Denver Broncos. I think he's going to be a great piece for Vic Fangio for years to come. I do think, however, Ernest Jones is in for a really good career with the LA Rams. This is probably a 10-year veteran, probably, you know, 5 to 7 year starter, and then might see, you know, him start to decline, kind of like James Laurinaitis, not the most amazing athlete. So, you know, he'll start to decline when he hits, you know, his early 30s. But still, I think he's in for a very solid career. I think his floor is pretty high for a draft pick, like, again, which is why, you know, I have him as a day one starter. So there's that. And on top of that, I will say, because of his athletic profile, I do think he has a lower ceiling than maybe expected. I think he's going to be a gem of an IDP pickup, in my opinion, for Dynasty Leagues, because he's going to be a Rams starting linebacker. I think that's key there, something to point out. And again, having a day one starter, you know, in Ernest Jones, I did say that I wouldn't necessarily rush him off the field on third down, but I wouldn't hold it against the Rams if they did. You know, because here's the thing, is that they have guys like Troy Reeder who are better in coverage. They have guys like Traven Howard that can alleviate the pressure there. And then, you know, we talk about the pseudo linebacker Taylor Rapp, or if they want to use Burgess in that role or what have you. It's good. They have a lot of depth there. So he doesn't need to feel the pressure of being on the field all 3 downs every single, you know, round. And I don't think he should feel guilt if he's taken off the field on third down, because it could be less about him and more about what they have behind him. They're going to want to get other guys involved like Kaiser and Kenny Young. So, you know, I will say that. Traven Howard is absolutely the best complementary piece in the linebacker room for Ernest Jones, and I think that's why they're projected 1 and 2. It makes a lot of sense. Traven Howard is going to be, you know, your go-to guy in coverage. He's your sideline to sideline guy. Ernest Jones doesn't need to be that. Ernest Jones can be that guy that, you know, does a little bit of everything, but is not solely focused in coverage, is not solely put in a position to fail. I think they're going to keep him in position to succeed. He'll be that leader. He'll be that man in the middle. He'll be the signal caller. And then at the end of the day, they'll have Traven Howard, you know, cleaning up the trash. This is somebody that will stick his face in the fan and will make things happen. A big con of Ernest Jones' game is disengaging from blocks. I do think, you know, from bigger guys, you can see, you know, from the film, tight ends didn't have any issue shoving him. There are times where he gets in one-on-one matchups with a tackle. He's not going to disengage as well as some of the other linebackers in this draft. I did notice that. That is a con. It's something that they can get by, but it is something to keep in mind. So at the end of the day, Ernest Jones, solid quality starting linebacker for the Rams that they picked up, in my opinion. However, I absolutely would have gone with Baron Browning. I think he's got Pro Bowl level talent and potentially could be a Hall of Famer depending on what he does in Denver. He's got unbelievable athleticism to go with his football IQ. Ernest Jones is another high football IQ guy. So, you know, there is that going for him. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I do appreciate you guys as always. Be sure to subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Let's discuss. What are your thoughts? Was I too hard on Ernest Jones? Was I too giddy about Ernest Jones? You let me know. Also, we're working on other videos in this format. Ben Skoranek, Rams wide receiver in the 7th round out of Notre Dame. And of course, we're also looking at other guys like Ernest Brown, the 4th, out of Northwestern. We're going to have other guys as well. So we're going to keep this up. We might even do some guys that are on the Rams at this moment, weren't even drafted, like maybe a David Long breakdown, things like that. But that's going to do it for me. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your week. And I'll see you guys at some point this week, probably live, or I'll probably put out more videos. We'll see. But I spent a lot of time on this, so I hope you guys enjoyed. You guys take care. I'll talk to you guys soon.